Hey, what's up? It's Achilles here with Indecisive TCG, making another video. This time I want to make a video on a game that I really liked. I picked it up before One Piece. It kind of died, but it looks like there's a little resurgence, new packs, new character cards coming out. We got like solo leveling, we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, new IPs. So now that it's picking back up and it looks like there's a scene in Houston, I want to go ahead and throw out a how to play video. Hopefully this is helpful to you guys. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the character card, and I'm going to be going through these slides pretty quickly, but I will have these slides available for you to view at the description, so just check that out. But the character card is the most important card. It's the card that you build your deck around. It tells you how big your hand size can be, and if you'll see, and there's different green cards with a number on top of it, that's your hand size. And you also notice the character card has life, and it looks different for everybody. And also a character version, you might not see them on everyone, but if there's multiple of that character, you'll see like a character 2, so same name, character 2, just, you know, different card with a different effect but the same name. And just to reiterate one more time, this is the card that you build your deck around. So you're going to look at their effects, which are called like enhances, and you kind of want to build your deck around that on top of different restrictions on deck building, which I'll let you guys know later down in the slides. But our next slide is how to win. First way is you see the life 2910, you get that to 0. Another way you can get a win is if you run out of cards, but this game has cycling, so it's not really easy to run out of cards, and I'll talk about cycling later as well. And then there's also some cards like Kandor. You see he has 10 life, less than like what you've seen in the other slide, and that's because he has a special way to lose, which I believe you put 3 at the start of the game. You put 3 tokens on him, and every time he goes to 0, instead of losing the game, you'll take a token off, and then when he has no more tokens, that's when the game ends. So just different character cards may have different conditions, but let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So game zones. Now for game zones, we'll start with 1 where you put your character card. You'll put it right there on that 1. The special slot for that, you put your deck over here. And then 3, the card pool, is kind of one of the most important parts, the place that you're going to be putting your cards when you first put them into play. And this is where you either check to see if you played it successfully or if you didn't. Now depending on at the end of your turn, they'll either go to the discard pile, and then there's certain cards that will go into the stage area, and we'll talk about that later. As well as your attacks, you can choose to put your attacks into momentum. Momentum is kind of like your super bar, your ultimate bar, so you're basically storing up what is it, not exe or points. You start storing up points so you can use a super or bigger effect later on in the game. So let's talk about the setup. So it says randomly determine who goes first. I know at the pre-release that I went to, whoever won the dice roll went first. Now I don't know if you get to choose or not. I'll get more details on that, but basically whoever wins goes first is what I'm gonna go with. Then whoever goes first, they have to put their character card sideways, and it's what we call commit, and we'll get more into that later. Both players draw up to their hand size, so if your hand size is 7, you'll draw 7 cards, and then both players get to mulligan. Now mulligan for player 1 is different from player 2. The way player 1 does it is they can put their entire hand at the bottom of their deck and then draw a new hand size, and you can do that up to 2 times. Now for the second player, what they get to do is they get to, out of their starting hand, put the cards that they don't like to the bottom and then draw up to their hand size. And then also when the turn starts for the second player, they get to draw an additional card, so they actually get to go above their hand size. So if it's 7, they get to go up to 8. So in UniVersus, there are only 3 phases: a start phase, a combat phase, and an end phase, and it always goes in that order. Okay, so the start phase. Now remember, if you're player 1, you'll skip this step because you already done like 2 mulligans. But when it comes to the next turn, when it comes back to your turn, the first thing you want to do is any cards that are turned sideways, you including your character card because it starts sideways, you get to turn it straight up. That's the ready step. And then you have the review step, where you get to look at one card that's in your hand. If you do not need it right now, you could throw it into the discard pile and then draw another card. So there are no dead cards in your hand. And then you have your draw step. So if you only have 2 cards in hand and your leader has 7 card hand size, you get to draw 5 more cards, putting you back up to your original hand size. So every turn at the end of your start phase, you will have the same amount of cards in your hand size, unless you have some other card like effects that make you draw or something like that. But that's besides the point. Let's go to the next step. Alright, so combat phase. That is the most important phase, and this is where we do what we call different forms, and those forms can consist of 2 things: either playing a card or playing a form ability. And form abilities only can be played when like nothing's going on. So it's like after any, like you can't do any forms, like you can't play another card while one card is kind of like resolving, if that makes any sense. We'll definitely get more into detail about that. So that's what I'm saying, like no ongoing attack sequence, no response windows, and no other card abilities are being played. That's when you can play a form. And the types of cards that we'll talk about that right after we talk about this end phase. Okay, so the end phase, this is pretty much the cleanup part. Things that go on. So we'll talk about I talked a little bit about momentum and attacks that are successful, but attacks that are failed, they go into like the discard pile. So you'll just review what happened that turn, and you'll put cards in their proper area. It's kind of like a cleanup turn and like a preparation for your opponent's next turn. It also where you build your stage, and we'll talk about all that other stuff later. But we can just think about the end phase as like a little cleanup time. Okay, so now I want to talk about how you actually play a card. Now, once I have a card in my hand, it's my turn, and let's say this is like the 5th turn, and I decide I want to attack you. The first thing I need to do is play the card into the card pool. Once that card is in that card pool, we'll look at its difficulty, and we see that this one is the difficulty of 3. And then I'll take a card off the top of my deck and put it into my discard pile and look at that card that I placed in there. I'll look at its check. Now, if that check is equal or greater than the card's difficulty, then I'm able to play it. And if it isn't, I am able to use either my leader card or some cards in my stage area. I can commit those cards, and each card I commit is a +1 to my check, and I can do that up to whatever the difficulty is in order to play it successfully. And later on we'll talk about like progressive difficulty. So the more you play a card, it adds 1 to the difficulty rating. but we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the main thing I want you to get is when you play a card, its difficulty is what you need to your mill card. So whatever you mill, whatever that check, you want that check number to be greater. If that happens, then your card is successfully played and you can continue playing the turn. Now, once you miss a check or once you're unable to, I say like drop the combo is kind of how we I like to refer to it, because this is kind of like a fighting game. Once you've dropped the combo, once you have missed your check, then your turn ends and then it's your opponent's turn. So you'll go immediately into your end phase. So you don't want to, you're not able to just play cards and miss checks. So once a check is missed, is now your end phase and then your opponent's turn. Okay, so now I told you how to play a card. Let's talk a little bit about the different types of cards that we have. We have orange for the attack, gray for the foundations, blue for the action, green for the assist, and pink for the backup. That's a newer one, but definitely going to go into each different types as best as I can for you guys. And we're definitely going to start with attacks, because this is how you deal damage. This is how you win the game. Now each attack, you'll see it'll have zones and speeds. So if you notice here, we have these arrows with a number. These arrows are significant because those are the zones. They're telling you that I'm throwing a high punch, I'm throwing a low beam, I'm throwing a mid dagger at you or a slash at you. And that's important because when it's time for them to block, they'll have to block with the adjacent zone, and we'll talk about that later as well. But then there's the speed, and that's the number, how fast I'm swinging at you, which also applies to how they block, and it makes it more difficult for them to block. The higher the number is, you know, the faster the punch comes, the harder it is to block. Now we also have this number and like this damage icon, and this is what they will take if they don't block, like they don't do a full block. And each card has its own damage, and these all can be buffed, and we'll talk about that later. And you also in the attacks have these keywords. These keywords, generally the white ones are kind of used for other effects, where the white ones, like if a weapon was played before, this card gets +2 damage or something like that. Those keywords in color kind of mean something, and we can talk about keywords in like a different video. But I don't want to put too much information into this, and I will make a different video to just explain keywords. So you've successfully passed a check on your attack. Now what happens? This is where I call the enhanced step happens. So as soon as you play an attack, we go straight into an enhanced step. So the first thing that happens is blitz. Anything with blitz happens, and you can only play blitz during this time, and then it moves on to enhances. Once enhances goes through, and this is a game of back and forth with enhances, but we'll talk more on that after enhances go through. Blocks happen. So these are the steps that things happen. We also have these effects called responses. The responses happen whenever if you'll read it, it'll say response when a card leaves, or response when this happens. That's when response happens. Those are kind of like continuous effects that are always checking to see when that happens. So the blitz abilities, like I said, as soon as the attack is passed, these blitz abilities can happen. This is like a newer effect that mainly only Attack on Titan cards have, but this kind of gives you a boost, a strong boost, or something quick to do before the enhance. So it's something that like the rival isn't really able to respond to. They are optional, but as soon as this whirling slash comes into play, you have to choose if you want to do commit up to 3 foundations. This attack gets +1. Like, and I won't read the rest, but basically you have to choose if you're going to do that effect or not, because once it goes into the enhanced step, you cannot do any more blocks, but you can do enhances. And the way enhances goes is the first person to attack, after the blitz step, it goes into that enhanced step. The first person who attack gets priority, so they get to choose the first enhance. Once you choose an enhance, it might be this card loses a health, and this attack gets +2 damage. So you'll lose that health, you'll get +2 damage to that attack, and then your opponent gets to respond with their enhance. And once they choose an enhance, then you get to choose one, and y'all go back and forth until you say, hey, I have no more enhances, and they can continue doing more enhances if they want. And these enhances are going to be positive to attacks or are negative to attacks. Like this attack gets -3. Y'all keep doing that until everybody decides that they don't want to enhance no more. Once that happens, the final, once both players agree that they don't have any enhances, then you're done with the enhanced step. Another thing I want to say about enhances is you can do an enhance only one time per attack, but not per turn. So if you play another attack right after that, I can choose to lose another health to get another +2, as long as you can meet their conditions, and their conditions are before the colon, and then after the colon you can do their effect. And just to give you a few, commit, which means to turn the card sideways. You have flip face down. Once you flip a card face down, it is now a regular foundation and it has no effect, but you can still use it for other things. Destroy, which means to take it from out of your stage area and put it into your discard pile. Then you have remove, which means to remove the card from the game, as well as spin the momentum. And like I was telling you about those attacks that are successful, those that go like above your leader, you can use one of those cards and use that effect. And then you also have the discard, which means to discard cards from your hand. So as long as you're able to do that, you can continue using you can use that card multiple attacks, but once per attack, but multiple times throughout your turn. One more I want to say is, when a card is committed, then you are unable to use those enhances anymore, unless the card says playable while committed. They might also say tenacious. Tenacious means the same thing as playable when committed. Okay, so you and your opponent both agree that, hey, I don't have any more enhances that I want to do right now. Then you go into blocking. So basically, if your opponent chooses to block with the high attack, you can block with a card that has, and it's out of your hand, that has either a high shield or a medium shield. So you can block with the card that's in the same zone or the adjacent zone. The thing about picking the one that's in the adjacent zone is you'll take half damage rounded up, even if you block successfully. Now, if you do it in the same zone, and you block successfully, you take no damage. And even if they take half damage, that card will still go into momentum. But if you block it successfully, they don't get to get that card into momentum, and you also don't take any damage. Now this step is a little bit more into the blocking step. So we're gonna look at this example. This card sees the opportunity, has successfully been played. We chose not to do any enhances, so the attack is going at you from a high area at a speed of 4. Now I don't have any high cards in my hand. These are the cards that I have in my hand. I am unable to block with a low because it's not adjacent to that high, but I am able to block with the card in the middle. So the one that I have is a block or a shield of 2. So it's a 2 difficulty. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the speed of the attack and the difficulty of the block, and we're gonna add those together, and then that's the number that they need to check. So they need to check a 6. So after they place the blocking card from their hand to their card pool area, then we add the block difficulty together. We'll take the card off the top of our deck, throw it into our discard pile, and we get the 6 that we need. So we don't need to use any other cards in our stage to commit to pass that check. So now that block is not full block, it's a half block. So I would still take and it doesn't show the damage, but I would still take half that damage, and that card at the end phase of their turn will go into their momentum. And the more you block, just like anything that goes in the card pool, the more you put in the card pool, the harder it is to play. Okay, so that was a lot on attacking. Now we're going on to foundations. Foundations are those gray cards. They're like ability enhancers. So once you've played it and it's checked, it doesn't do anything else. There's no other steps. You'll play it into your card pool. At the end of your card pool, if it's successful, it goes into your stage area. Once it's in your stage area, whenever we go into the enhanced step, we can use these cards to enhance our attacks. So these are kind of like the building blocks. That's why they're called foundations, and that's also why you build them. So once they're successfully checked into your card pool, then they get built into your stage area, and they're ready for the next time you enhance. Or if it's a response card, it's waiting for that response effect to happen, and you're able to use that ability. And also foundations that are in your stage area, you can use those to help any cards pass checks, and they will be committed until your next ready step. Okay, assets. Now I'd like to explain these as stronger foundations. They do exactly the same as foundations. Once you play them in the card pool, once they get checked, they go into your stage area, but you cannot use these cards for checks because they have strong abilities. Okay, now actions. Action cards are very unique because these cards are played out of your hand on either player's turn. So if you jump into your enhance step and you have an action card that has an enhance, during that turn time you will play this card out of your hand. Or if there's a response, as soon as that response triggers, you can play it out of your hand. You'll check for it, and if it passes, the effect goes through. and these cards stay in your card pool and are discarded. If they're if you miss the check, they get discarded, but if not, they stay in your card pool, and it goes towards progressive difficulty unless otherwise said. Backups. So backups is a new thing that was added with the Attack on Titan set. So currently, those are the only cards that have backups, but they're kind of just like foundations, played the same way, but once they go into your stage area after you've passed your checks, they have their own life, and your opponent can choose to either attack you or the backup. So they're also a shield, but if they do choose to attack your backup, you cannot block the backup, but you can use some enhances to lower that damage. That way it doesn't take any damage if you can lower it down to 0, or you can minimize the amount of damage. That way you can still use their effects. There are also attack cards that have this new keyword called shift. Once the attack is successfully played, the shift activates, and at the end of the turn, if the card is blocked, you can still build the card upside down as a backup, or if the attack went through successfully, you can choose to either put it in your momentum or build it as a backup. Okay, so now I want to talk about character cards and why they have a block, a cost, and a check. And that's because some character cards can go in your deck, and how you can tell which cards you can put in your deck if it has the block, the cost, and the check. If it doesn't, then you can't put it in your deck. Now, there are specific reasons why you would put character cards in your deck. Main reason, let's say you're playing Fat Gum. Fat Gum's second ability needs for you to have 10 life, or maybe be in deadlock. And deadlock is something we can definitely talk about later. But once that condition is met, you're able to search anywhere on your deck, your stage, your trash for a copy of Fat Gum 2 and play him. Fat Gum 2 cannot be your starting character, but you can play him, and once he checks, he'll go into he'll become your starting character, and Fat Gum 1 gets discarded. All of those get removed from your stage, and removed, we can say removed from play. So there are certain characters that can use those effects. Now, if you just have a regular character and you decide to play them, they will go into your stage if they're the exact same card with the exact same character. Those cards can go into your stage, like kind of attached to your leader. But if it's not, that card gets built and then put into the discard pile. And just another few characters that would use it, Toga being I want to say the best reason to put any other character cards, or best character besides Fat Gum to put a character card in there. And I actually want to build a deck because it looks interesting, because she gets to remove a character from your discard pile, so you could use that card to block or for a check. And once it's in your discard pile, you can remove it from the game, and as long as it's not a once per game ability, you can now use that enhance. Our Toga's enhance now becomes that, and you're able to use that. So very interesting, and these are a few other ones, and I'll leave those up for you guys to read those. Okay, so now I know I brought up progressive difficulty and I said we'll get back to it, and this is the perfect time. I want to say you guys know all the cards that can go into the deck. So now I want to say playing multiple cards. As you see in this scenario, we've already played a card and now we're playing a second card, which is a backup card. That difficulty is 4, and because I've played one card before it, it gets a progressive difficulty of 1. So now I need to check for 5. Now we go and we'll do our check. We get 4. It misses because of the progressive difficulty is 5. I commit a card to make it 5, and now the backup is successfully played. And that goes on. So the next card I play, because there's 2 cards I played before it, it gets +2. So ideally you want to play your high numbers first and then your low numbers afterwards, because you'll be able to play those cards a lot easier. If you played 5 cards, or if you've played 8 cards, and for your 9th card you try to play a card that has a difficulty of 5, you have to add that 9 and that 5 together, and then you have to check that, which is not impossible, because if you have a bunch of stages on the field and this is late game, then you're able to tap those I said stages, foundations. You're able to tap those foundations that are in your stage to pass that check. Generally, I think the biggest check I've seen is 6. So now I want to go into cycling. So cycling happens when there are no cards in your deck, and once no cards are in your deck but you have cards in your discard pile, what you will do is you'll take your discard pile, you will shuffle them, you will remove 10 cards from play, and then you'll put those cards that you just shuffled onto your deck pile, and you'll pick up where you left off there. So if you're in a mill 4 situation, you mill 2, you'll mill another 2. Or if you're going for a check, you'll do the check with that card off the top. And if you cannot remove 10 cards, then the game is over. So hopefully this video has helped you guys out. This is just like a collective of all the knowledge that I've gathered. I kind of learned how to play this game on my own, and now I'm getting like help on learning like the smaller details, and then also just looking at all the different sources that they have. They're kind of all spread out. So I kind of wanted to do this video just to get you to know the basics of what you need. If you guys want me to do another video, I think I want to do another video on keywords and explaining each keyword. I can also put down in the link just different resources on how to get the information. I'll put all that down in the description. But this video has gone on for a little while. I will put out more. Just comment down below if you want me to do like a trial gameplay. I do plan on posting gameplay on this channel, and I also plan on dropping that keywords just to explain it, because that was another thing. So once I kind of learned how to play the game, I didn't know exactly how all the other keywords were playing, and at the time I learned how to play it, it was at the time that the company had switched companies. It was like right before the company had switched companies, and a lot of our local game stores stopped carrying UniVersus, and it looked like it was gonna die. But like I said, it looks like there's a resurgence. There are a couple of stores that still play it in Houston, and there's a new store that just added it to it. So it looks like it's picking up, and I'm excited to see where this game goes. This is one of the funner games, something that's unique and different, but definitely got me into it, and something I definitely want to play more. But yeah, we're out.